Okay. It's very yellow.
That's just life.
Well, no, it's the walls. The walls are very yellow.
Yeah. As soon as we start live feeding on here, I'll share. It says it's live streaming on there?
Yeah, it says live.
Okay. I don't know why it's not popping up. There it is. Perfect as it should. Allie, you can actually zoom it in more. Don't cut the top off, but you can bring it in. As in, don't straight the zoom screen, but you can move the tripod closer.
Okay.
And
Wow.
zip it up. Or just leave it. And just move it
Not
closer,
like
so
that?
the audio will be better. Yeah, you can go. It's capturing a good bit wider than it says it is. Okay, tip it up a little bit.
How's that?
It takes it a second to update. Like on a 4-second time lag. It's like a 10-second time lag. That's good. It just updated when you moved it up. All right, I think we kick off. What are we at? 6:12. Do anybody out there want to sit?
Yeah, hey.
How many seats do we still have in here? Or how many seats? How many seats could we still have? All right. Anybody who wants to eat, come on in and there's a seat.
Come on, Mac.
How do we want to fit? 6 fans on it. What do we want to make that?
Wait, we can just we'll pull another chair and it'll be fine.
Someone.
Mess you up.
We didn't anticipate an overflow room.
Yes, we did not.
Feel free to shove that thing as far down as it goes. Yeah, or is that as far as it goes? Okay. All right, Allie, do you want to kick us off? And then we'll go ahead.
Okay.
It's tight, so I'll stay here.
Good evening, everyone. I am Allie Shaw. I'm the founder and owner of a local marketing business called Madison Media. And I am so excited to be here with y'all tonight. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you for your patience with how tight the room is. We very much appreciate that. But we're so encouraged that this was as popular as it was. So thank y'all for being here. When Joel first talked to me about this Bitcoin project, I really wasn't quite sure what to think. As a liberal arts major with no background whatsoever in technology or economics or financial theory, I was a little unsure of what it meant to market something like Bitcoin, which, as you know, is very fluid when it comes to economics and financial theory and things like that. So I had to learn kind of a different language almost to start interacting with it. So I was skeptical about my ability to do that, but I wasn't in any position to say no because I have a new business. So I was super excited to come on with Joel and excited about the challenge.
And Allie and I have known each other for
And we've
25
known-
years here, so yeah.
Yes, we've known each other for a while. But soon I was faced with a dilemma. So how do you market a solution that is the Bitcoin monetary system to a problem that is the U.S. financial system that is so incredibly complex? And it's not just complex as a system, it's also complex with how we interact with it relationally and emotionally. I mean, has anyone else ever had a tense conversation maybe with their significant other or wondered how to make ends meet? So there's all sorts of complexities that go into talking about finance and talking about financial systems. So that was my dilemma. So how do you market something like that? The answer is you don't. You see, at its core, this is not about convincing people to buy something. Instead, this is about advocating for a money that more accurately reflects the value of our work. So I'm going to say that one more time because that really has had an impact on me as I've dug into Bitcoin and what it is and how we interact with it as human beings. It's not about convincing people to buy something. It's about advocating for a money that more accurately reflects our hard work. And we work hard, that's for sure. So what we want is a sound money, a money that buys more over the long term instead of less, a money that can't be inflated or manipulated, a money that works for the individual and not simply the institution. So once I realized this was a much bigger project than just kind of a marketing campaign, I started asking for questions, right? Some of those questions I was asking were, well, how does our U.S. monetary system even work? Because I didn't know. I had no clue. So that was one of the questions I asked. Another question I asked was, what about my family's generational history with the U.S. monetary system? What did that look like? So those were the two main questions I started asking as I was engaging with this project. And this is what I discovered about my family, because I know everyone loves talking to their parents about money. So this is what I found out. So when the Great Depression hit, my great-grandfather refused to go to the bank to try to get his money out. He did not think it was a morally right thing to do to make a run on the bank. Now, whether that's right or wrong, because it was his money, I still very much applaud his integrity, because he had integrity in the situation. The banks, though, did not. According to my grandmother, he lost $10,000, approximately $150,000 to $200,000 in today's terms. Just gone, wiped out in the Great Depression. So in essence, they had robbed him of years of labor, a life of work destroyed, really, by the greed of those he entrusted his money to foresee. So, okay, you might think, well, that was the Great Depression. That was almost 100 years ago, right? So let's bring us a little bit closer to home and fast forward to the agricultural bubble of the 1980s. My father, his grandson, lost his entire farm to exorbitant interest rates and a recession, among other things. At 620 acres of good farmland plus equipment, he lost the equivalent of around $3 million today. Gone. They actually auctioned off his land at the courthouse steps in Aberdeen, Mississippi, and he didn't even go because it was just gone. So, of course, I could go into the economic difficulties during the Great Recession of 2008, which I'm sure we all remember, but I think you see my point. Our current monetary system has just an atrocious track record of causing economic turmoil by destroying the purchasing power of people's money. I've seen it, you've seen it, just look at U.S. history. It's full of booms and busts and underhanded dealings that leave average people like us in dire financial situations with no option to ever fully recover. Not only that, but with the digitization of money and online transactions, a few key economic players now have a significant control over how, when, and where we access our money. So, in light of this, how big of a problem is our current financial system? Depends on who you ask. For some, it works very well, but for others, not so much. So, regardless of your view, though, of the current financial system, we have something now that my great-grandfather and my father never had, and that is a choice. We now have the option to use an entirely separate monetary system, that is Bitcoin, that although volatile is a wider adoption, can't be inflated or manipulated. So to tell us about that, I've got obviously Joel Bumgar coming, and I think everyone in here may already know him, but just in case you don't.
Yeah, I don't need an introduction. You can skip that part. Yeah. I don't know what you got. I don't know what you got.
Needs no introduction.
All right. So, thank y'all. So, what the PowerPoint I want to go through was built by Nathan McNeil, one of my co-founders of Omgar Corporation, with me providing a lot of feedback, but him doing all of the work. He and I started a few months ago trying to figure out, could we build the perfect PowerPoint presentation to explain why the world needs Bitcoin? Because it's hard. Even Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, at one point posted on the message board, this is really hard to explain to people because you can't compare it to anything. So anyway, so after a bunch of iterations, I want to show you a version of this presentation that is not out there. You may notice a few slides here and there, but we've reworked it around the concept of comparing two systems, the US monetary system and the Bitcoin monetary system, the Bitcoin system, and showed the compare and contrast and answer questions. So normally I would start by going around the room with just some thoughts by each person. Because we got this live streaming as well, I'm going to jump straight into the presentation, but then we will go with Q&A as long as y'all want to go at the end. All right, so this presentation is a tale. In fact, let me see if I can do it so I can look down. This is the tale of two systems. All right, so why do we use money at all? The reason we use money is it makes it easy to trade. It is hard to trade eggs for a cow for a house for eggs, and so money sits in the middle. You get paid in money, and then you use money for stuff, so you don't have to barter, right? So we figured that out, humanity figured that out many thousands of years ago, that barter doesn't work, and that money is good. Okay, so what most people don't realize is money is also a system. So the US dollar is money, but it's also a system. There are banks, there is a central bank, there's government, there's taxes. We're going to talk about all of those pieces. But the two most important things that a money system does is it manages two things. Who owns what? Money, kind of important. Who owns what money? And this one that nobody thinks about, which is how much money is there? What is the total money in the system? Okay, so I want you to think about the money system, in this case, the US dollar money system, as a spreadsheet. Okay, so when you ask people about money, all they think about is my money, right? I mean, most people have not thought deeper than how much money do I have, how much is in the bank, how much is in wherever they think about their money. But there's another number that is super, super, super important, which is this number, which is how many dollars are there in the US dollar system. And the reason that number is super, super, super important is because what you can buy is one number divided by the other number. So if you change, well, we'll walk through the whole scenario here, but this number is only valuable depending on what that number is. That number is literally half of the money equation, is how much is there? So you have $100. Well, $100 of how many dollars, right? Okay, so that determines your purchasing power, one divided by the other. And the purchasing power is the total amount of things that could be bought by US dollars that you have the ability to buy with your US dollars. Okay, so you have $100, the total system's only got $1,000. You can buy 10% of everything that dollars can buy in the world. But if that number goes up from $1,000 to $2,000, suddenly, even though your $100 did not change, the amount of stuff you can buy with your $100 dropped in half, even though you were literally holding the same amount of money. So, and the way inflation works is like the moving sidewalks on an airport, right? Which is, you can stand on it, but if you're going the wrong way, like it's going to keep pulling you back, right? So yeah, you can walk, and if you walk at the same speed as it, you're standing still. If you really work it, you can sort of get ahead of a moving sidewalk that's trying to move you backwards. But as soon as you stand still with your $100, you're not standing still. If somebody is changing that bottom number, you're moving backwards. Okay, so all the money in the system, just to reiterate, can buy all the stuff in the system that could be bought at any given time with the money. So $100 here, everything in our little economies can buy $100. You increase the money to $1,000, and immediately all the prices are going to add a zero. The price of everything, because the amount of money and the amount of stuff has to equal. If it's helpful, think about it like an island, right? You can dump as much money as you want in the island, but all the stuff that you could buy with the money is always going to equal. So you can't make people wealthier by just dumping money on it. But if the same person only has $100, the way this works is, let's say I have $10 and the whole economy is $100. I can buy a cow on this island. But if somebody drops a bunch more money in and I still only have $10, I can't buy the cow because the cow costs $100. Now I can only buy the eggs. And in the US, you can't buy eggs hardly for $10 anymore. It's crazy. So anyway, so you've got your dollars, and the dollars in the system determine your purchasing power. So how many dollars are there exactly? Because every dollar you have is divided by how many total there are. So right now in the United States, there are about 22 trillion US dollars sloshing around. So however much you have is divided by 22 trillion, and that is how much of all the stuff you could buy that US dollars could possibly buy at one time that you get to buy with your money. And right now that'll buy you about a 1 gram set of gold earrings, just to use a random thing to compare it to the real world. 22 trillion. Okay, so has it always been 22 trillion? Has $100 always bought you about a gram of gold? The answer is no, because on average, the US government prints about 7% more money every year, which means if you roll back to 1960, there used to be only $286 billion sloshing around in the system. There is now 75 times as much money in the system, which means if you're holding $100, you've lost a huge amount of purchasing power because money's been pumped in that has diluted your purchasing power. So back in the age of the Beatles, your purchasing power would have bought you, because it was only divided by 286 billion, you could have bought 88 grams of gold, right? 88 grams of gold for $100. You fast forward to the present, and you can buy 1 gram of gold for the same $100. Because again, the 100 didn't change, that bottom number changed. Okay, so when that number rises, your purchasing power falls. This is why you see prices rising. It is why the Big Mac has increased by a factor of 12x in its price since 1968, which was just an easy number to get a Big Mac price on. And it's why Campbell's soup costs 10x. Humans get better at making everything every year. Every year we get a little bit better at making a Big Mac and a can of Campbell's soup. So why is it 10x and 12x more expensive, and why on average everything you buy now as compared to 1960 is about 10 times as expensive? Now, you may be thinking, yeah, but wages have gone up. Like, we don't make the same money we did back then. And that is true, but it's only about half as much as the money comes in. So they dump a bunch of money in the system. About half of it eventually trickles down to people like you and I. And the prices, you're moving backwards in all of this. Which means, if you're a poor guy who eats a Campbell's soup can and a Big Mac every day for lunch, well, now you can afford half of a can and half a Big Mac with the exact same money that or the same amount of labor buys you half as much. So why don't we feel wealthier when we have more money? Because, as Adam Smith taught us, wealth does not consist in money, but in what money purchases. We've known that all the way back to 1776. We've known for a long time. Okay, so at this point, what's going on here? Who manages this? Right? I mean, this is a problem. Like, you've got your money, but who's managing the other side of this equation? It's covering up a little bit here. Anyway, Ben. Okay, so here's how the system works. Banks keep track of the green number up here, which is my money and your money. Who owns what is sort of mostly kept by banks, unless you got like dollar bills in your pocket. And the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank, determines how much, basically makes sure two people don't own the same money. If you move money between banks, they'll keep track of all that. Okay, and the actual Federal Reserve, it's a fancy spreadsheet called Microsoft SQL Server. It's a database, but it's really a spreadsheet that keeps track of who has what over at the Federal Reserve. Okay, so what about dollars in the system, this red 22 trillion? How does that change? Well, there's something called the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and when they decide, we'll talk about how this works, when they decide there needs to be more money, there is more money. So these guys, and this is headed up by Jerome Powell, who's the guy that chairs all this sort of stuff, when they decide to double click on that money and change it from 22 to 23, that's about it. The money goes up. Now, they have, and that's why that number has been on a tear, because it's really easy to increase the total dollar supply in the system. It's really hard for you to increase your wages and earnings. It's really easy to increase how much money there is sloshing around that your stuff gets divided by. Okay, so if in the dollar system, if that number goes up easily, your purchasing power goes down quickly. So the Federal Reserve has a bunch of fancy names for when they are printing more money that are making you poorer. It's called quantitative easing, monetary stimulus, open market operations, monetary accommodation, central bank balance sheet expansion, asset purchases by the central bank, bailout financing, debt monetization, ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. They did this for quite a while. ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, which means we're going to flood the economy with dollars to try to keep interest rates and borrowing costs low. And NIRP, negative interest rate policy, where they actually try to flood the system with so much money that the interest rates get negative. So there's tons of money printing. And the only thing that holds it back is politics, right? I mean, politics has to constrain this human urge to make magic more money, and you can guess how that goes. So, politicians have a lot of really good excuses / reasons / really excuses to print more money, right? Because they want to maintain liquidity in the financial markets, support economic recovery and growth, ensure price stability, provide stimulus in response to downturns, facilitate the functioning of the banking system, prevent credit contraction and support lending, address financial instability, sustain economic activity, achieve the central bank's inflation target, and counteract external shocks to the economy. It is all fancy ways of saying, we have a magic money printer, and we have decided that we're going to make more money. And meanwhile, your money is divided now by a larger number, which means your purchasing power goes down. Okay, so to reiterate, as the number of dollars goes up, the value of the dollar goes down. If you rewind to 1935, right at the sort of tail end of the Great Depression, the US dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power since 1935 in the last 90 years. Okay, so that's what you got left. You got five pennies of purchasing power left in the last 90 years. So at various points in time, humans have had this bright idea, which is humans cannot be trusted to not just make that number bigger, right? Because when you make that number bigger, whoever's closest to the magic money printer gets the money, which is the closer you are to Washington, D.C. or New York. The more the money seems to sort of flow to you, and then your wages go up and everybody else's go up half as much and all that. Okay, so we tried at one point, in various countries do this, it's failed 100% of the times it's ever been done, which is to try to do a gold standard, which says you can't print more than you got gold in a vault somewhere. That way, we're gonna tie the hands of these people. So the US dollar actually used to say on it, well, here's exactly what it said. I'll zoom in. This certifies that there have been deposited in the Treasury $10 in gold coin payable to the bearer on demand. Literally every piece of paper you could swap it for gold anytime you wanted to. Up until 1933, when, well, as you can imagine, they printed too much money. 100% of the times anyone tries to do the gold standard, they print too much money, and then they have to de-link it from gold, and they're like, whoops. That's what they did in 1933. They basically said, hey, instead of exchanging it for an ounce of gold for $20, $20.67, next day, first they confiscated everybody's gold. FDR confiscated everyone's gold. You had to turn it in, otherwise it was 10 years in prison and a massive fine. If you did not turn in your gold, you were allowed to keep jewelry, but any gold you had that was bullion, coins, anything that could be used as money, the government forcibly took it from everyone. And then as soon as they had it, they repriced it from $20 to $35. So all the people who had been storing their money, expecting to be able to buy stuff in the later, all got devalued basically in a day when they revalued it. So the government ultimately broke the promise in 1933, and they finished breaking the promise in 1971, where they said, hey, now not even countries can exchange their paper for gold. Now, I thought this was interesting because when I was running through my van looking for something else, I found a $5 bill from 1960, which is really interesting because, again, this one here said you can redeem it for gold coins. Right there, certifies gold. Anytime you want, you come swap it. This $5 bill says Federal Reserve note on the top, and then it says, we'll pay to the bearer on demand $5. Now, I'm holding a $5 bill that entitles me to be paid to the bearer $5. Well, $5 of what? So they didn't just do it all at one time. Initially, the dollar said, you can get it in gold coins. And then it wasn't gold coins, it's just, you can get $5. This was in the in-between state when a $5 bill entitled you to the bearer, payable $5. But they didn't say in what. And then in 1971, they dropped the charade entirely, and they just said, it's a Federal Reserve note. So the $5 bill that's more modern literally says Federal Reserve note. It doesn't make any promises. It just says it's a piece of paper. But it used to get a little more fancy. Okay. So the dollar system runs on politics. It is a political system. I spent 8 years in the House of Representatives. The dollar runs on politics. So what about different governments? If you don't like US politics, what about other governments? Are they any better at this than we are? So every other country's money, is any of it better than the US dollar? So sad to say, they've all tried this game before. They've all broken the promise. They've all gone off the gold standard. They all print money. So this is how a bunch of currencies, virtually all of them in the world, compare to the US dollar over the last 10 years. This is how much they are down on top of how much the US dollar has lost in purchasing power. So this is compounding. So if we zoom into the upper left corner, if you're in Venezuela, you're down 99%, Sudan 99%, Syria 99%. That's on top of the purchasing power that's been lost by the US dollar. On top of all that, this is another 90, 80, 90% on top of that of loss of purchasing power. And it's not just crazy nations. The British pound has lost 24% more than the US dollar has lost. The Indian rupee, the Canadian dollar, even the euro have all lost more than 20%. More than the US dollar has lost, and the US dollar has lost a huge amount of its purchasing power. So Everybody else is even worse than the U.S. as far as they run their money printers even more out of control than we do. Okay, so are there any other options to this system where a small number of people controls a magic money printer, you work for money they print out of thin air, and the amount of things your money can buy is constantly being divided by a bigger and bigger number? Thankfully, yes, there is. There's another system that we'll talk about. One second. So due to the frustration of exactly all of this, someone named Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin in 2008, but released it in 2009. It was the culmination of about 40 years of effort. People have been trying to solve this problem of money for 40 years before Satoshi Nakamoto finally solved it. Everybody kept coming up with different pieces of it. Different people solved different pieces, but nobody could figure out how to solve the problem that put it all together, because the problem they were trying to solve is digital scarcity. How can something digital be scarce? Because if it's digital, you can copy paste it. And if you can copy paste something, then it's not scarce. So how do I know in a digital money that I'm not using somebody in Thailand using the same digital dollar that I'm using, and then we both eat a great meal of pizza, we both walk out and they're like, uh-oh, it was the same dollar, it got spent twice. It took 40 years to solve that problem until Satoshi Nakamoto finally solved it. And had he not solved it, it could have gone hundreds of years before it was solved. The breakthrough that it took to solve that was not the sort of thing like we were going to figure it out eventually. It was such a genius breakthrough that almost everybody who looked at Bitcoin initially was like, that'll never work. Like, what was this guy thinking? A blockchain and all, like, it was such an out of the box idea that nobody could figure out where this thing came from. But it turns out, even though 16 years later, nobody has solved the problem of digital scarcity other than with the way Satoshi Nakamoto solved it. And people have tried millions of other ways to solve the same problem. They always end up with something like Satoshi Nakamoto invented, because you just can't get around that. All right, so what is Bitcoin exactly? Well, Bitcoin is a money system that runs on software. And that software works like a spreadsheet, just like banks and central bank, and it runs on computers. And the Bitcoin software keeps track of my Bitcoin, and it keeps track of your Bitcoin. And most importantly, it limits all the Bitcoin to 21 million. Okay, so if you own an amount of Bitcoin, you know with absolute certainty that your purchasing power is that amount of Bitcoin divided by 21 million, and that will never change. Never in the history of humanity have we had that. Even with gold, if you're holding an ounce of gold, humans dig about 2% more gold out of the ground every year, 2%. Law of 72 says the time it takes for something to double is 72 divided by the number. So 2 divided into 72 is 36 years. The amount of gold that humans will be holding in their hands 36 years from now is double all the gold we've ever dug out of the ground in 5,000 years. And 36 years after that, it's going to double again. And it's going to keep, because we keep getting better at digging stuff out of the ground, and we keep getting better at digging out gold at about 2% a year. So even if you're holding an ounce of gold, you could say, yeah, I hold 1 ounce of gold as compared to all the gold. Yeah, but that's all the gold in the universe. But the purchasing power is dependent on how much we dug out. And the amount we dug out keeps going up because we keep getting better at digging more gold out of the ground. That's not the case for Bitcoin. Nobody can inflate your Bitcoin. Nobody can take your, nobody can make your Bitcoin lose purchasing power. Okay, so the software has hard-coded rules. It tracks who owns what, and it also enforces that 21 million limit. So let's look at who owns what. So all of Bitcoin is protected by an encryption key. So if you have something like my favorite little bit key thing, if you have a bit key, the encryption key is on here. And they have a ton of ways of backing it up to make sure you don't lose it. Like, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I can talk about this all day long, and I will if y'all let me later. If you have something like this, the encryption key is inside it, and it never leaves it. If you are using Coinbase, they control the encryption key, and you access it with the username and password. Downside of the username and password approach is a hacker or a scammer who ends up with the username and password, gets your encryption key through Coinbase, and boom, your Bitcoin's gone. And that is an increasing problem in the world right now. Okay, so the encryption keys of Bitcoin are so strong that even to crack one would take a billion trillion years of all the computing power in the entire world just trying to crack one of them. And at the end of that time, you get one person's Bitcoin. and you start on the 2nd percent Bitcoin. Well, we're not going to be around in it. Literal. I ran the numbers. It's not a made-up number. It's actually 37 billion, trillion years before to crack a single key with all the computer power in the world. Okay, so computers that running the Bitcoin software connect to each other, and they make exact copies of what is on the Bitcoin blockchain until 100,000 Bitcoin computers have the same number. So I brought here, this is my Bitcoin node. Until I unplugged it about 2 hours ago, this had a copy of every Bitcoin transaction that's ever happened in the entire Bitcoin history since the beginning of time. 16 years. Every transaction that's ever happened. Now, it doesn't have like Coinbase transactions where they're bouncing around inside Coinbase accounts, but as soon as that's written to like the actual Bitcoin blockchain, every time somebody's used a BitKey in their entire life, I can't tell whose is whose, right? Because it's just numbers, but it's all stored on here. And there are more, this is called a Bitcoin node. There's more than 100,000 copies of this, and you only need one of them to have the accurate statement of truth. But there's more than 100,000 because people like me are like, it's just cool. It's just cool to have the whole Bitcoin blockchain in the palm of your hand. Do I need to? No, because there's 999,999 other ones, or whatever, 99,999 others, but it's cool to have my own. So I actually run 2 Bitcoin nodes. This thing costs like $450. You plug it in, you download the little Bitcoin app on it, and it takes about 23 hours. On C Spire Fiber, it took about 23 hours to download every transaction that's ever happened on the Bitcoin network. As soon as I get home, I'll plug this back in. It will detect that it left off 2 hours ago, and it will connects to about 25 other nodes, and it will request the updated copy from one of those 25 nodes, and it will go through and it will validate every single transaction that happened while it was gone. Every single transaction, it will validate that they had a valid private key, that that it moved legitimately, that nobody violated the 21 million limit. It will all do that inside this little computer, which is pretty cool. All right, so if I have the key, I can send Bitcoin to my own BitKey. I can send it, if I have access through Coinbase to the private key they're holding on my behalf, I can send Bitcoin. And every computer, it takes about 2 seconds for the majority of all of those computers to have a replicated copy. In fact, people are so hardcore about this, there's a bunch of Bitcoin nodes running on satellites. Because everybody's like, well, I just want it in more places, right? So it takes a little longer to replicate to the satellite, to the Bitcoin nodes that are running on satellites, like an extra second. But more than half of all the nodes, if I transmit Bitcoin to that BitKey device, that's a demo unit. But within 2 seconds, the entire world, more than 100,000, will have that transaction. And then every one of those nodes is checking every single transaction to make sure nobody's violating the 21 million limit. So this was a headline from Wall Street Journal, if you trust the Wall Street Journal, that says, behind Bitcoin's rallies, a simple fact: supplies are limited. There will only be 21 million. And fresh off of the White House with the establishment of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve is this exact quote: the Bitcoin protocol permanently caps the total supply of Bitcoin at 21 million coins and has never been hacked. You gotta imagine, nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. You gotta imagine somewhere the guy's reading this stuff and is like, that's pretty cool. The Wall Street Journal is all over, this thing that nobody thought would become anything. And the White House is talking about Bitcoin and talking about the 21 million limit. Okay, so 21 million is all the Bitcoin that will ever exist. Nobody can make more. And it's programmed to disconnect anybody that tries. So if I went in here and monkeyed with the software and said, hey, when I transmit Bitcoin, I want you to keep a record where I have one tiny fraction of a Bitcoin more than I'm supposed to have. The other 25 nodes that are connected to this one will all cut me off. They'll be like, rules, everybody. The rules state if you don't have the private keys, you don't own the Bitcoin, you can't move it. And if you try to change anything that would result in there being more than 21 million Bitcoin, you are off the network. So you only need one of those 100,000 nodes making sure that there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Because everybody who tries to change that rule gets disconnected. There's just a bunch of us who are like, do I trust the other 999,999 people? No, I want to trust myself. I want to be the one also enforcing the rules. But again, you don't need a Bitcoin node because there's literally 100,000 people like me that are fanatically watching to make sure nobody changes Bitcoin. But anyway, so the value of Bitcoin is going up as more people adopt it. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But you have a choice. For the first time in history, you have a choice between systems. You have a choice between the US dollar system where the money is losing value. There is not a day that goes by that, in fact, I posted a meme on Facebook that, it's this like crazy looking dog that's like, you know what's worth less than $1? It was like, what's guaranteed to be worth less than $1? The same dollar tomorrow, right? I mean, it's just like your dollar is always losing value, and we're all part of this system. That's the system the United States runs on. But the Bitcoin system is gaining value because it cannot be debased, meaning it cannot be inflated, etc. So one other thing I want to talk about, because the biggest thing people run into when they see this chart, they're like, why is it all over the place? Why does it go up and down? Oh no. So I want to talk about that, and then we'll do Q&A and anything else you all want to cover. So money is gaining value. So why does it, I'll talk about this chart in a minute, but why does it do that? Well, the price is volatile. Yes, the price is volatile. It's volatile on a daily basis, minute basis, hourly basis. But where does that volatility come from? It does not come from Bitcoin, interestingly enough, because Bitcoin is the most stable thing in the world. Like, the more certain than death and taxes is that Bitcoin's going to keep going. Like, it will keep going if there's a nuclear explosion. It will keep going if, a comet hits us. Like, Bitcoin is going to keep producing new blocks of transactions every 10 minutes for the rest of eternity. So the volatility has nothing to do with Bitcoin. Its uptime is 100%. It has to do with the price of Bitcoin in a world that is volatile. So Bitcoin is living in a world where a bunch of crazy stuff's happening. We're getting tariff announcements. Nope, they're on pause. They're on pause. They're paused. They're paused. And everybody's like, wars and this and who's going to bomb who, and like, Bitcoin is living. It is this fledgling, tiny, little new thing, and it's living in a very volatile world. So prices of things respond to volatility, right? You get a big freeze in Florida, and suddenly orange juice is expensive, right? Prices respond to external things. So, but prices of bigger assets respond less. So real estate is a $330 trillion market. Bonds are $300 trillion. All the money in the U.S. is $22 trillion, but if you include all the other countries, it's about $120 trillion. The stock market's $115 trillion. So big assets respond less, and local markets respond less. Like the U.S. stock market's affected mostly by U.S. news, right? I mean, because it's just local. Okay, so volatility is two big factors when you're looking at how volatile something is, which is how big is the market it in, and how big is the asset. So a good way to think about that, I'll use some pictures in a second here. So the US dollar is about 18% of the world's money, and it's in a massive market. It's the most liquid market in the world right now is the market for US dollars. So it's like this. The US dollar is like a large ship in a large ocean. A lot of stability because it's large. It's a large ship in a large ocean. So the dollar's sinking, but it's sinking slowly because it's a large ship. It can weather a lot of waves, a lot of tides, a lot of things can hit that boat without you feeling a thing if you're on it. Okay. So Bitcoin is 18%, Bitcoin is 1.3% of the world's money. And it's only 0.2% of global assets. By comparison, it is tiny. Bitcoin is a small asset that is new in a massively huge market, and it is the only asset in the world that anyone can own. Currencies are national. You can't just show up in Bangladesh and say, hey, I want some Chinese yuan, or like most assets are local. If you own a building, it's in a place. Bitcoin is the only global asset out there that literally anyone anywhere in the world can own from anywhere. So Bitcoin is really in the biggest ocean of any asset, which is all 8 billion people potentially doing things that affect Bitcoin. So I want you to remember this picture every time the volatility makes you nervous. Bitcoin's like a little boat in a huge ocean, and it's going to respond accordingly, right? Every little wave is going to make the price jump up and down. Now, it's way more stable in the price than it used to be. In the early days, people are like, it's too volatile. It's like, not compared to what it used to be. I mean, it used to be this tiny, tiny thing where the price was going up and down 90% in a day. So smaller systems go up and down easily. Larger systems are more stable. But it is only a matter of time as Bitcoin grows till Bitcoin becomes the largest system in the world. Because Bitcoin has the ability to be the money and the monetary system of the entire planet, and that will never be the case for any other currency, because every other currency is tied. For example, in the Ukraine war, when Russia invaded, the U.S. government froze and confiscated $300 billion of the U.S. Dollars that Russia was holding. So which sent a message to everyone else in the world, which is, should you hold US dollars? Well, only if you're friendly to the US right now, because as soon as you're not, they're not really your money. Like, nobody thought that that wasn't Russia's money until it suddenly wasn't Russia's money. So even if they were at fault, it's still like the whole rest of the world is watching and it's like, should we adopt the US dollar? It's not really ours. it's sort of, you're using it by permission until somebody doesn't like us, and then it's magically not ours anymore. So Bitcoin will get there. But in the interim, while we're waiting for Bitcoin to get there, because it gets a little bit bigger every day, you can zoom out. So this is the price history on a daily basis. I'm going to go back to zoom out, but I want to tell one quick story here. So Bitcoin, so you can't tell this. This is a massive run in the price, and it went up to, $32. Back here, it went up to $32 and crashed to $2. You can't even see it because the price has gone up so much since then. Over here, the price ran up to $1,200 and came down to $92. That is major volatility. You can't even see it anymore. It's barely a blip. Each of these blips back in 2017, the double thing in 2021. Those big waves of adoption are all people not only adopting Bitcoin, but also speculating on how fast it's going to happen and how big it's going to be. So, right in here, 2017, everybody's like, adoption's around the corner. The whole world's going to use Bitcoin tomorrow. And like the price runs way up. And then people are like, yeah, but not like tomorrow. Like it's going to take a little bit of time. And it turns out humans are actually slow at adopting things, right? Especially money. And so everybody's like, oh no, it's going to take forever. And the price drops down. And then people, some time passes, they're like, adoption keeps growing and growing and growing. You get to 2021, people are like, it's right around the corner. And then it drops back and people are like, well, not right around the corner. Anyway, so you get these big things. But when in doubt, zoom out. Because if that looks scary, if you average the price over 1 year, it smooths out a lot of that. So it's like, this is the price of the average price over the previous year, from every single day to the present. It looks a lot smoother. If you average the price over every 2 years, well, it gets even smoother. And then if you zoom out even to 3 years, now most assets, I don't think there's any other asset that if you zoom out to 3 years, looks like this. That doesn't look volatile at all. And if you zoom out to 4 years, there has literally never been a time in the entire history of Bitcoin where the price has been lower than 4 years prior. Never. It is always higher than 4 years ago. So you get these waves on the interim where people are like, adoption is right around the corner. No, it's going to take longer. No, it's right around the corner. No, it's going to take longer. We just had this happen. Donald Trump was inaugurated on the 20th and 21st, and with the promise to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And the price goes up to $109,000. People are like, he's like going to buy $1 trillion of it tomorrow. Nobody said he was going to buy $1 trillion of it tomorrow. So then the price starts to go down to people like, he hasn't signed an executive order yet. It's like, it's been 12 hours. Was this like his only priority? So then the price marches down. Then he finally signs an executive order to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which took a few weeks. And everybody's like, but when are they going to buy a bunch of it? It's like, give it a minute. First of all, I don't care if the government owns it or not. On one hand, I kind of want the government to be on the same side as me of a Bitcoin owner with aligned incentives. On the other hand, I love the fact that the vast majority of Bitcoin is held in the hands of people, not governments, not companies, but individuals. It's the only bottom-up phenomenon, really. In the United States, you're not legally allowed to invest in private companies unless your net worth is above $1 million. If you wanted to invest in, even Prospera, where I work, we're subject to U.S. law, right? So if somebody raises their hand, which happens regularly, I want to invest in Prospera. If your net worth is not above $1 million, excluding your house doesn't count, net worth has to be above $1 million, you cannot invest in private companies in the United States. It's illegal under Security and Exchange law to protect you. But what that means is, every company you can invest in after Wall Street's made a ton of money, and now it's publicly traded. And a huge amount of the upside is gone, and now it's publicly traded, and you're allowed to invest in it. Bitcoin is a bottom-up phenomenon where anybody can invest in it. There's no accredited investor requirement. You can invest $1, even if that's your only dollar. And so Bitcoin has resulted in the vast majority of Bitcoin being owned by individuals. And Wall Street was late to that party. Governments are even later to that party, which to me is just fantastic. So Bitcoin's never been down. So now we have a choice. This is Bitcoin. It is a better system. It will take time to be adopted. I believe in the future, Bitcoin will be the monetary system of the world, that everyone will use Bitcoin for everything, that everything will be priced in Bitcoin. But every new money throughout history goes through, and I'll close with this and we'll open it for questions, goes through stages. Even gold, when gold was originally used as money, it was initially a collectible. A collectible meaning somebody found this yellow rock and started showing it around and was like, look at this. It's cool. Like, have you ever seen a yellow rock? Like, this is cool. And then a few people collected them and they started trading yellow rocks with each other. And eventually, someone traded a yellow rock for something, right? Just traded something, and then it became money. It becomes money. When you trade something for something else, it becomes money if you don't plan to, like, eat the thing, right? So when somebody traded gold for a slice of pizza with the plan to use that gold to trade for something else, that it became money. So money goes through a collectible, then it is a store of value. People hold it to plan to trade it for other things. Then it becomes a medium of exchange. They're actually trading it actively, and then it becomes a unit of account, which means things are being priced in it. Bitcoin is not a collectible. Nobody is collecting Bitcoin for its, sentimental value. It's way too expensive. Bitcoin is a store of value. Almost everybody who owns Bitcoin is using it as a store of value. My debit card's over in my phone, so I won't pull it out. But the Coinbase debit card that I buy everything with is a way of using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. Typically, it takes like a decade from something to go from a store of value to a medium of exchange, and probably another decade to go to a unit of account. So we're not right around the corner from everything being priced in Bitcoin, because you only price things in Bitcoin when that's what everybody's using to exchange, and you only exchange in Bitcoin when everybody's using that same thing to save. So there's always a natural store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account, and Bitcoin is very much a store of value with people like me, and it's medium of exchange properties are relatively. Most people trade it for other kinds of money rather than for goods or services or things like that. With Coinbase debit card, you can buy anything you want with Bitcoin, and I like doing that. And it lets me keep fewer US dollars in bank accounts because I can buy everything with Bitcoin. So we have the opportunity for a better money for the first time in history. Prior to the invention of Bitcoin, you didn't have a choice. There was no way to stand in a room like this prior to 2009 and say, opt out of the system that takes your value, where someone is printing from thin air something you work hard for. There was no way to opt out of that system because Bitcoin did not exist. You couldn't use gold. Gold doesn't work to transact. There's like no other option, and it's amazing that we live in a world that's what we have. So, with that, I'll turn it. Let's open it up to questions or anything. Allie, do we want to do anything before questions?
No, I think.
If you need to come and go, I understand it's super tight in here. You're not going to offend anybody if you have to slip out for kids or babysitters or anything else. But open up for questions. I will answer absolutely anything. Except how much Bitcoin I have. I will not answer that. The only question no Bitcoiner should ever answer is how much Bitcoin they have. The rule is talk about Bitcoin all the time. Don't talk about your Bitcoin, or at least not specifics about your Bitcoin, because there's no reason anybody needs to know that. So yes, Janet?
How safe is the use of the debit card? Can it be easily hacked as any other debit card?
It is like any other debit card. They do have a $2,500 limit. Some people, I prefer to spend in Bitcoin. Some people spend in credit cards, and then they pay off the credit card bill with Bitcoin that they store. For example, Strike, a company is led by a guy named Jack Mullers. He has like 5 different credit cards that each have like 5% back on meals, and he uses that on meals. Like, it is all credit cards, and then he's got it set to direct deposit to pay off his credit cards at the end of the month. So he basically floats the US dollars as long as possible and pays it off with Bitcoin. So he holds $0 US dollars. He just floats it with credit cards and pays them down. I prefer to pay with Bitcoin because I want to know exactly how expensive something is when I'm buying it. I'm like, my watch says Bitcoin is $82,700 coin, and what restaurant I'm going to eat at is dependent on, if we're up at 109,000, I might order a little higher on the menu than we're in the 80s. And I don't want to buy something now and find out that my credit card bill is being paid off with Bitcoin. That's a little volatile. I'd rather know what it is. But you can do the same, but it's a debit card. It's got a $2,500 day limit, and I've never had an issue with fraud. I only use it contactless payments, and actually I guess I use it online for a bunch of stuff, but it's never been hacked or leaked. But it's as safe as any other debit card. If you're not comfortable with that, use something else and pay it off with Bitcoin. That works too. You're just not like using Bitcoin. I just think it's cool to pay everything with Bitcoin. It lets me keep less US dollars. Yes, Nancy?
Well, when you pay with something with your debit card, do they charge you some sort of a tax for it? Like if you spend in the United States?
Good question. So the way it works is every asset, no matter what asset you own, if you sell it for more than you buy it for, you owe taxes on just the gain. Not the whole thing, just the gain. Coinbase keeps up that for you. So at the end of the year, I've got I download my tax statements like 500 pages, but I don't care because it's like, it auto integrates with TurboTax. and you push one button and it goes to TurboTax, or you just give it to your financial advisor and Coinbase pre-fills your tax forms. And if anybody wants to audit me, I'm like, great, have fun. It's like, you can go trace all 500 transactions and you'll see in there that, Coinbase keeps track of, like, here's the Bitcoin you sold to buy this thing, and your pizza costs this Bitcoin, and it's always going to sell whatever is your most expensive Bitcoin, so that your tax, the delta will be the lowest. It sounds counterintuitive. You're like, I want it to sell the cheapest Bitcoin, but like, no, you actually want any asset, any commodity, you always want it to sell, doesn't matter if it's corn or wheat. If you sell corn or wheat for more than you pay for it, you want to sell your most expensive corn or wheat. And the IRS lets you, it's called highest in, first out. So whatever your highest cost base of Bitcoin is, but it takes care of it all for you. So it's just like, it's an extra 10-minute, 15-minute headache once a year on taxes, where I got to download a 500-page PDF and send it to Horn CPA Group and tell them, they just file with taxes, who cares? Like, it's really long. But anyway, I think it's cool. Other questions? Okay, so Coinbase, so with Bitcoin, most people buy it on Coinbase, which is a place where you can buy and sell Bitcoin for US dollars. It's called so in the US dollar system, they're called banks because they're like supposedly holding your money, but they don't. Like, they like loan it out the next day, so it's not really there. But with cryptocurrency, which the Bitcoin is the only one that you should mess with, the other ones are all like trending towards zero. They're all sinking like that big ship at various speeds. Bitcoin is the one that's not. But Coinbase is a place you can swap US dollars for Bitcoin or back again. So if you decide you want to cash out, you swap it back. And you can do that 24/7, all day, day or night. You can pull money from a bank account into Coinbase to buy Bitcoin. You can liquidate it to US dollars and push it back to the same bank account. It's called an exchange because you're exchanging it. But you can also just leave Bitcoin on Coinbase. I prefer to hold it on something like this because nobody's going to hack it or scam. There's no hackers or scammers that are going to get a hold of Bitcoin with something like that, and they've built it where you basically can't lose it, which is cool. I mean, you could like lose the device and you could still recover your Bitcoin. You can lose your phone, you can still recover your Bitcoin.
That was smart. That is.
Yeah, can I talk about this real quick? Okay, this is the coolest thing ever. So this is called BitKey because it keeps the key to your Bitcoin inside of it. So Jack Dorsey started Twitter, and he also started a company called Square that makes payment terminals. And he recognized that the world did not have a good way of storing Bitcoin that was super secure, out of the hands of scammers and hackers and all of that. And so he put his team on. They also make Cash App. If you're familiar with Cash App, that is their app. So he put his team, since they do a bunch of payments and stuff like that, he put his team in charge of finding a way to store Bitcoin where it was easy to use and hard to lose. That was the tasking. Easy to use, hard to lose. And so the way this thing works, it's got a fingerprint reader on it. This is a demo unit, so it turns red for my fingerprint because my fingerprint is not paired to this, but it's got a fingerprint on it. And it stores your private key to your Bitcoin. Your phone also stores a private key to your Bitcoin, and they have it basically super secure where if you want to move your Bitcoin, you have to touch this to your phone, and it authenticates before it'll let you move your Bitcoin. But the most brilliant part of it, which is what everybody's worried about, is what happens if I start losing stuff. If you lose this, you get a new one, and your phone puts the key back on this device, and you're back in business. If you lose your phone, this puts the key back on your phone. So you can lose your phone, and it puts it back. You can lose this, and your phone puts it back. And it also keeps an encrypted copy in your iCloud account of your key, and one of your friends, which is called a trusted contact, can help you decrypt that key. So if you lose your phone and the BitKey device at the same time, which should never happen because you should keep this wherever you keep your valuables, which is not like in your pocket. This has no value on it. I don't carry a BitKey that has any value on it. Like, it's not at my house, it's not on my person, it's in a safe places that are not there, right? So you should never lose them both at the same time because your phone and your BitKey should never be together unless you're moving, substantial amounts of Bitcoin around. But if you did lose them both at the same time, let's say I go to C Spire and I turn in my phone and it's got the key on it, I get a new phone and I'm all excited, I forgot that my key was on there. And then I get back to my house and my house is burned down. Yeah, I don't keep the BitKey in my house, but if I did and it burned down, what do? Well, there's an encrypted copy of the key in my iCloud account that's tied into Apple. And one of my trusted contacts, you can have up to 3, can help you decrypt it. So you just have to prove that you are who you are. So I call William over here and I say, William, how do I need you to authenticate I'm the real me so I can decrypt the key. And it will ask him, are you chatting with Joel on the phone? He'll click yes. It'll say, I will not give you the key. The phone is not secure.
Are you texting Joel? Yes. Nope, not secure. I will not give you the key. You have to say you are on a live video call or that you are in person before it will give him the decryption key that lets me decrypt my iCloud account. It is a brilliant setup that basically makes it impossible. And if that is still not good enough for you, it has inheritance planning, where someone who has a BitKey can be set up to inherit your Bitcoin in case you and your trusted contacts all go down in a plane with your BitKey devices all at the same time, and then Apple has a glitch and deletes all of y'all's iCloud accounts at the same time. What happens to your Bitcoin? Well, after 6 months of all of that wreckage clearing, whoever is set to inherit your Bitcoin will inherit it to their BitKey device. So they thought of everything. It's like, it is the most genius thing, and I cringe every time I get a text. Because somebody will text me out of the blue, hey, I need help with my Coinbase. I'm like, oh no, they did not get hacked. Please tell me they did not get hacked. Because hackers and scammers are, voraciously trying to get people's stuff. I get texts constantly, did you reset your Coinbase password? If not, call this number, we'll help you. There's a scammer waiting on the other side saying, oh, I knew it. I'm just gonna need you to read me your 2-factor authentication code and I'll get your account locked down. They're just waiting there, ready to punch it in to take whatever's there. And that happens a lot. And people have, the two most common, or the most common way they get it is people have Gmail accounts without 2-factor authentication turned on. And then they're reusing a password for the Gmail account. So what will happen is the hackers get their Gmail account, then their passwords are all backed up in Google Password Manager. So they go back, they get their Gmail account, they look through the password manager, they're like, Coinbase, well, welcome to the family, Coinbase. So they log into Coinbase, which requires 2-factor authentication, but if you're using Google Authenticator for the 2-factor authentication codes, those are all backed up to the Google Cloud, which means they just pull it right down from the Google Cloud. So they get your email account, and then they have all your passwords and all your 2-factor authentication codes. Now they don't. If you get 2-factor authentication via text to your phone, they don't have that. They have to hack your phone to get that, which they generally give up rather than that, unless they know you have a large balance. But this just bypasses all that. I'm like, somebody calls me and if they have a BitKey, as long as they have one trusted contact, I'm like, the Bitcoin's there. There's literally nothing that could possibly go wrong that's going to make this Bitcoin not be there. And it's just, I'm nervous when people are like saving it in the cloud, and I'm like, the private key is up there in the cloud, and so are all the hackers. So anyway, yes, Terry.
So I have a question about the inheritance thing.
Yeah.
Try to find this on BitKey. Is it just, so like, if you have like a regular, say, account in anything, you can have your beneficiary, and then you have your or whatever they're called, the other beneficiary.
Yeah,
whatever. Where like you can have your husband,
and then waterfalls all the way up.
Yes, and then you can have your kids, and it can separate it out. And what I couldn't find was how many of the, and here, because the reason I asked is because you say like, oh yeah, if you go down a plane, well, what if my entire family, which is my inheritance, what if all of them go?
Right.
Like, who's going to know that we have this? How it's, we have a will, but like, you see what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like it's not like, and even with the Coinbase, that's what's kind of made me like kind of leery, even though I have it, it's like, there's no way to put my husband on there, there's no way to put my kids on there, and that's the thing that's just really made me.
Well, so Coinbase works like a bank in that, if you pass away, if they have the key to your phone, and they can just log in with your phone if you're not there. But if you go down on a plane crash with your phone, then they would have to show up with a death certificate and say, hey, I need to transfer ownership of this account. So that there's a process for that, just like your banks with Coinbase.
Like Coinbase, you can call them and you can get all, but then like BitKey,
so with BitKey,
somebody doesn't even know you have it.
Right. So, well, first of all, they can't be set up to inherit without knowing you have it, because you send them a code, they click the link, it says, who just sent you this? You say, here's who it is, and they say, great, you are now set to inherit.
But all those people go down the plane.
Again, there's limitations of everything. So my inclination would be to say, don't set it up where the inheritance is, within your family. Like I would set it up where it's like.
So it's only one. So that's what I was wondering.
You can have an unlimited number of ones, but again, if it were me and you were worried, like, hey, you always travel as a pack all the time, I would say, well, who's the most trusted person outside our family? If we all go away, who's going to do this? Because here's the thing: as long as your family knows. So let's say you've got an uncle, or I don't know, a trusted uncle, uncles are usually crazy uncles, so I don't know. Let's call it a trusted aunt. Yeah, that's probably what. You have a trusted aunt that's outside your family, and everybody knows that, hey, if we all go down, the inheritance goes to the aunt. And this will have up to this. You can have up to three. Three fingerprints on this thing. So you can have you just set it up. You add your husband, you add your oldest child, whatever. There's three of you. So, but everybody knows that, hey, if all three fingerprints disappear and all of our phones go with us, then Aunt so and so after a 6-month period is going to have the Bitcoin. So they don't have the legal right to it. They just get it, right? So, legally is, hey, everybody, after 6 months, Aunt so-and-so is going to get the Bitcoin, and you all need to go, divvy it up with whatever the will says. So the legal right to any asset is determined by a will. The technical ability is determined by the chain of who's set up to inherit.
And I guess that's what my question is. If you have taken all of your stuff off Coinbase and put it on, say, BitKey, and yes, for whatever reason, all these people are gone, or whatever, it's like, and you have the will, and yes, it trickles down and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure how to ask what I'm trying to ask. How does, you say, that this person would get it? How do they get it if they don't have anything?
So
you say they don't have the
inheritance requires
I thought you had to have a big
Yeah, you have to have a BitKey to set up inheritance.
Right, but you've taken the stuff off. Nobody even knows you have it that's left.
Well,
No, but the inheritor.
the inheritor is going to open their BitKey app, and they're going to say, under the inheritance tab, it's going to say, here's who's set to inherit your Bitcoin, and here's who you're set to inherit from. And
So the trusted aunt has to have a BitKey herself, with
Right.
a BitKey to do that.
Now again, your family members could have, you can tell your. I tend, for most people, my whole setup is complicated and anticipates a bunch of things that are never going to happen to me. But for average, normal, regular people, I recommend like a safe deposit box because
Well,
it's
that's
like.
what I'm talking about. Yeah. If it's,
So a safe deposit box costs $30. The bank's not going to burn down. It's in there. You can show up to a bank with a death certificate, and you got to jump through all the hoops and prove you're, not there, and they can get access to it. So get your trusted aunt to put a fingerprint on this thing and just leave it in a safe deposit box
I
and
didn't
say,
realize you could do 3 fingerprints on
yeah,
there. I
3
had not
fingerprints.
Read that.
3 trusted contacts, 3 fingerprints, and anyway, so yes. So nothing's perfect. I mean, again, you can bury US dollars in your backyard. One, they're
I
losing.
guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, yes, if you did something like
And then nobody knows about it, and they're going to be there a long. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not going to be nothing left. Not only will they inflate away, but the dollars will deteriorate. So yes,
Joel, so let's say I believe in the Bitcoin system. And,
Yep.
on a personal level, I want to start doing everyday transactions using the Bitcoin.
yep,
But I still got to keep $100 or $300 in my wallet.
yeah.
What's the easiest way to go about that? And then what about the next step of that question would be business transactions.
Sure. So businesses are going to be one of the last to adopt Bitcoin, and the reason for that is all they're really worried about is how easy is it to manage tips? How accounting, I don't want to be dealing with. So like the Square payment terminals will let you automatically keep 10% of everything you get in Bitcoin, so they make it easy. But most payment terminals don't. Like if I walk out there and I'm like, pay for pizza with Bitcoin, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? And there's no elegant way to do that. So if you want to spend Bitcoin, the Coinbase debit card, which is in the back of my phone here, I haven't carried cash for probably 7 years. I just don't carry cash. I keep a tiny amount in like my car in case like my debit card's not working and I run out of gas or something. But it's like $5 to $10, right? So it's not worth breaking into my car for. But for 7 years I've gone cash free, and everywhere I've ever gone has taken a debit card. Contactless payments as well. So like when I'm buying Chick-fil-A, I stick my arm out the window and pay with Bitcoin and using my Coinbase debit card. So that's the easiest thing. But for most people's journey with Bitcoin is create an account on Coinbase and buy some, and then watch it go up and down. Get comfortable with the fact that, hey, this little boat here gets tossed around a bit. And then the next step is, I want more, and they buy more. And the next step is, can I put some of my retirement in Bitcoin? Which you can. It's called the Bitcoin Exchange Traded Fund, an ETF. Fidelity has one and BlackRock has one. There's like 10 of them, but those are the 2 big ones. And you can put retirement funds in Bitcoin. And then pretty far down the line, people are like, I really don't want to have like almost any US dollars. Like I really want to sort of keep my bank accounts low enough where I won't bounce a check to a babysitter because some babysitters don't want to get paid in Bitcoin. So, but that's what I do. Like I would have to have higher. I don't have zero bank account balances, but they're low enough that I'm like, there's not much transactions. It's stuff that, there's still a few people in the world that are like, hey, I did landscaping work. I want a check. It's like, you take anything else? I need a check. I need like a paper check. I'm like, all right, it's gotta not bounce. But that's pretty far down is using a debit card. Same with the BitKey device. If people are like, I want to start, but I want to start right, I'd be like, look, BitKey is like, so the coolest thing about this, you are your own bank. Like, so one of the various nonprofits that I wanted to hold Bitcoin to be able to donate Bitcoin from, I checked because, setting up a Coinbase corporate account is very difficult. Coinbase, due to money laundering concerns and all that, it's very difficult to get a corporate account. I mean, just extremely difficult to get a corporate account on Coinbase because they basically want to do business with sort of medium and large businesses. So I asked the lawyer that was doing all the paper, I was like, can a BitKey be a business Bitcoin account? So he ran all the traps. He was like, yeah. Like, he's like, amazingly, this can be a business Bitcoin account. Now, most people are not going to use it that way because a business wants to be able to convert in and out of US dollars. But if you have a way of, if it's already in Bitcoin and it's going to go in Bitcoin somewhere else, like, you just got to keep up with it. Like, the only rules for tax and accounting are that you keep up with the transaction. But it can literally be a business bank account in the palm of your hand. And if you have one personally, you are your own bank. Like, you're your own bank. You're not dependent on anybody. Nobody in the world can take your Bitcoin unless they, force you to put your fingerprint on it and under duress and whatever else. But again, if they don't know where BitKey is, they can't do that either. But it's the only way that's like, wow, you're completely empowered. Like, all the armies in the world, unless they can find you, they can't stop you from transacting. There is nothing that can keep a Bitcoin transaction from going through. It's called permissionless, meaning you can transact in Bitcoin and absolutely nobody in the world can stop you, which is pretty wild that technology has. So, other questions?
How do you pay your Entergy bill? Do you
So,
give them your debit card number?
good question.
And
For-
they take it out every month? Is that right?
For stuff that I set up new, it's all the debit card. My Entergy bill is still set up from 10 years ago on bank draft out of a bank account.
Oh,
And I can set it up. Coinbase is rolling out a bill pay service at some point. I don't know when it's coming out, but they'll have a bill pay service at some point. And then I'll be able to bank draft out of Coinbase. You're not going to bank draft out of this thing because it doesn't have wiring instructions on it. But they will have that service. And until then, I'm just using a regular bank account because it's not that much, and I just keep a balance that it doesn't bounce. So, and it's been that way for 13 years, and I'm like, I really don't gotta go switch it over because they're gonna, Atmos Energy is, something's gonna get messed up and they're gonna turn my power off. So, yeah, but as soon as Coinbase has bill pay, I'll roll it to, and the way bill pay works, Strike, another company, has bill pay already. The way it works is just when it dings the account, it converts however much Bitcoin is required to pay that bill, just like the debit card does. Whatever the $82,700 price, it converts, and $300 of that is instantly converted and shipped off to Entergy. So Coinbase will have that at some point, is my hope. Stripe already has that, but it's just people are rolling it out little by little. And like I said, if anybody needs to go, do what you got to do. Bill, actually, I think Adam, I think we
got two historical questions.
Yes.
You made sort of a Monty Python reference in 1933. Bring out your gold. Bring out your gold.
Right, that's right.
FDR instead of John and Cleese.
Yep.
What keeps history from repeating itself? Bring out your Bitcoin. Bring out your Bitcoin.
So the gold only worked because almost everybody had gold in banks.
Okay.
And so the government edict, they basically never went door to door. The mandate went to the banks of, hey, if the banks don't want to go to prison, you just don't. If somebody walks in, don't give them the gold and ship it to us in Fort Knox.
Yeah.
And all the banks complied because who's going to go to prison for someone else's gold?
Right.
The people who didn't turn up their gold ended up getting to keep it in 1975 when they re-legalized personal ownership. That's why I like things like BitKey, because first of all, the only reason gold could be confiscated was gold was in the Constitution. So they argued the Constitution says gold, which kind of makes it ours, which was ridiculous because it doesn't. But they're like, it said gold. Well, the word Bitcoin did not appear in the U.S. Constitution, so they could not use the same grounding. And unlike gold, where virtually all of it was in central places, easy to grab, about 88% of all Bitcoin is held by private individuals off in something like this.
Right.
So there's no, you can go to Coinbase, but like as soon as people get whiffs that that's happening, Coinbase's Bitcoin balance is going to go boom as everybody just pulls their Bitcoin as fast, which takes like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin's not in the Constitution, so there's no legal grounds. The Supreme Court would never stand for that.
Right.
And it's way too just decentralized. So they only got away with it with gold because gold was centralized. People didn't think that. They were like, it was my bullion. It's like, where was your bullion? Well, it was at JP Morgan because they had a vault. It's like, yeah, where'd they take it from? Well, they took it from JP Morgan. Yeah, they did. That's exactly how they took it.
So you also showed a chart about the number of Bitcoin that have been mined. It looked like about 2069, some nearly infinitesimal.
Sure.
You know, what happens in 2070?
Good question. So all of the Bitcoin that will ever exist, the way your purchasing power is determined by 21 million. Technically in circulation is about 20 million. The last 5%, slowly our Bitcoin miners mine it between now and the year 2140. Bitcoin miners who use little things that look like this, although there are massive armies of them, this is like a tiny one. The Bitcoin miners get, when you transact on the Bitcoin network, like this morning was like 24 cents. You can send $1 billion, $10 billion, any amount of money on the Bitcoin network costs about 24 cents. So if you're sending Bitcoin to this, it's going to cost you 24 cents because you're going to transact on the real network, and my little node and everybody else's little node is going to make sure you're not breaking any rules. But the Bitcoin miners get transaction fees, that 24 cents. So every 10 minutes, whoever mines the block and gets the Bitcoin gets all those transaction fees. So the network is set to mine it, to wean itself off of, new Bitcoin into existence. It had to start by new Bitcoin because there wasn't any to transact. But it slowly transitions entirely to transaction fees only. And that final transition will happen in the year 2140. 2140. It's 115 years from now.
So, I mean, we showed the volatility chart, and in 4 years it's not very volatile. It's just been nothing but going up.
Yes.
I mean,
so
that chart can that chart
go
on
forever?
a 4-year average continue to go up ad infinitum, or?
So it will go, Bitcoin is eating all other currencies, and then it will, so right now people store value in lots of things, including a bunch of things that should not store value, right? So your house is only as a good store of value because the government's printing a ton of money. And your house looks like it's going up in value because the government's printing a ton of money, and that results in all that money chasing assets. So this gets more technical than probably necessary, but money printing is especially bad for anybody who doesn't have assets because their wages keep getting worth less. But that money's got to go somewhere. So eventually it chases houses, it chases commercial real estate. So it chases the stock market and all that stuff goes up. But a lot of that, people are storing wealth in their house that probably they shouldn't because the house is slowly going to lose value over time. It just will. It looks like it's not because the money keeps chasing, the more money keeps chasing the assets. So to answer your question though, at some point Bitcoin will go from an amazing investment to just money. So 30 to 50 years from now, pick a number, I don't know, 25 years from now, it will be fully monetized. The US dollar price of a Bitcoin will be somewhere between $1 million, $3 million, and $13 million, depending on who you talk to. So somewhere between $1 million and $13 million, it'll just be money. And at that point, rather than losing 4 to 9% a year, the Bitcoin will have a purchasing power increase of about 3% a year. And the reason is that island I showed, that island keeps getting better at making stuff. But if there's only 21 million Bitcoin and humans get about 3% better at building and making and doing things, the Bitcoin buys about 3% more stuff every year. So in the interim, it's going to go through a curve where there's going to be significant investment gains by early adopters, and eventually the very last person in the entire world that adopts Bitcoin will just get sound money. They won't get any of the upside of the adoption of sound money. But just like someone right now, if you're investing in the stock market today, you can invest in all the internet companies. And they'll keep going up in value because people keep having babies and more people use Facebook, I suppose, right? But like most of the gains are gone because the internet's, most of those gains have sort of happened. Bitcoin is still very early. About 3% of the world population uses Bitcoin. That means 97% of the people have no Bitcoin. So as they adopt, the price will rise significantly, but it'll go in these waves. And I can't tell you what the price is tomorrow. I could just, 4 years from now, I believe it'll be radically higher than today. And eventually it'll smooth out, and everybody will be like, what's the big deal about Bitcoin? It's $3 million a coin, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything. And the answer is, well, yeah, because if you bought it when it was $82,000, and now it's $3 million, like that's a lot. And now you just get sound money that goes up in value every year instead of loses it. You still win, you just don't win as much as early adopters.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Again, I know everybody's got a time they got to go, and you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. I think Michael, or who was last? Oh, sorry, Bill was first, and then.
I used the two-factor authentication. I use Chrome as a browser. Is that
Yep.
a safe browser,
So,
or what would you recommend?
Desktop computers are less safe than mobile devices.
Right.
Because on like an iPhone, everything has to go through the app store.
Right.
With Chrome, it's a lot easier for people to do wonky stuff and malware and stuff like that. So mobile devices are safer than desktop computers because desktop computers are just way more able to run malware and viruses and stuff that's just capturing, like you try to log in and it's just capturing everything the screen sees. It's like it's feeding your two-factor authentication code as you type it in. Now, they shouldn't be able to get it because once you use it, they can't reuse it. But like, so I mean, you're probably fine, but it's just
use a mobile device.
Yes, but I was going to say it's mobile device, and BitKey has a mobile device that goes with it if you're moving Bitcoin around because you have to have something to create inputs. So, yes, Doug.
You mentioned it as an investment, and maybe a lot of people are trying to catch it early, and either invest like I am. A lot of the technical stuff you mentioned, I don't know if everybody understands, because I certainly am not comfortable. I've got Coinbase, and I had some help with that, but some of the more technical stuff I'm not comfortable with. But I do have a Roth IRA.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you can buy it just like with an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund, basically acts like a stock.
That's correct.
You're not technically being exposed to Bitcoin, but it represents Bitcoin. You can use it.
You own a bowl of Bitcoin, a bowl of a piece of Bitcoin. So it's not direct ownership, but you do get the economic upside.
You get the exposure to Bitcoin with zero risk.
Which is zero risk in that.
In fact, it's in a Roth with Schwab.
You have the Schwab or Fidelity risk of someone could still hack that account.
Yeah,
but most of the time, hackers tend to not know for those type of accounts because there's like 7-day waiting periods and all that sort of stuff.
My buddy Scott, he won't even press a button on his phone because of all the the hackers and stuff.
They're everywhere.
Yeah,
they are everywhere. But that is a great option. The Bitcoin exchange traded fund.
It's just a way for the average person to get in without having to learn the technical stuff.
And for retirement funds, you can put an IRA in Bitcoin, a Roth IRA, a 401k as long as it's not your current employer. Your current employer will usually not allow you to put it in. So if you have a 401k or a 403b that's with your current employer, probably off limits. If you have an old one that is not with your current employer, then you can take control of that.
I bought Bitcoin and I'm just going to buy it and never sell it.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a good investment vehicle to use.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Bitcoin ETFs. The hardcore Bitcoiners are like, but you don't get the power of it.
Transactionally, you're going to wait.
Yeah, I mean, if a Christian missionary in Asia calls you and you want to donate to him, you're not going to donate your ETF shares. There's literally no way they can go. But it's like, can I send a Bitcoin? Yeah, I can send a Bitcoin. Yeah. So it's just not the same level of power of
Agree.
But you come with the upside if it's in a retirement account and it's tax advantaged and you have to worry less about hackers and scammers and all that. So, Allie, when was this scheduled to wrap up? Do we even have a time?
This can be it. If we need
Did it say 7:30? Okay.
I said about an hour.
Okay. Well.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll stay around for unlimited. Anyone, and we can just move this to a come up and Allie, you can turn off the live feed. And anyone who has questions, I'll stay as long as y'all want. So.